Hey everyone, Starly here. I've struggled a lot with coloring my illustrations for many years. I realized a large part of the problem was not having a good methodology for coloring. Every time I approached a blank canvas, my mind would also just go completely blank. So today I'm going to show you this super easy and quick method you can use to color characters in your comics and illustrations. This is going to be especially helpful for comics artists since we color the same characters over and over again, and with this method, you won't have to do that anymore. There are going to be a few different steps involved in this process. This is all going to be after you have your line art completed, so make sure that part is already done. Step 1. Create selection layers. Step 2. Shading. Step 3. Gradient maps. Step 4. Smaller details. Step 5. Light sources. Step 6. Effects and finishing touches. This may seem like a lot of steps, but don't worry, once we understand each part, it's going to become really easy. For this video, I'll be focusing on step 3, gradient maps, since this is going to be the part that's really going to save us so much time, and it is a really powerful tool. Another benefit of this method is that it's very forgiving, so if you make a mistake at some point, you can easily fix it. There have been times I've been neck deep in layers and noticed something looks so off, but fixing it was just impossible because everything's all over the place, it's tough to find, and it just wasn't working the way I wanted. Let's get started. I've already created a video that goes over this part in detail and shows how you can quickly create the selection layers, so if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check that out now. There will be a link at the top of the video here. Watch that video and come back, or add it to your watch later playlist. For this method, you will need to make each part for the character into a selection layer. So I have one layer here with the entire body of the character selected. I have another for the skin, another for the hair, and two more for the clothes since her clothes are part black and part white. You may need more layers depending on your character. I'm not going to worry about selecting areas like her eyes or nails, since those will be added in during step 4 of this process. For this step, you will create a layer using the full body selection. Select the full body layer, create a new layer, and fill it with pure white. You want refer only to editing layer, and apply to connected pixels will not be checked. Area scaling will not matter. And again, anti-aliasing will not matter. You want refer multiple off. And as you can see, it's been filled in with white. Now I can just deselect this. And I will click on Lock Transparent Pixels. And then I will shade this using the pure black color. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be focusing on step 3 in this video, so if you'd like me to make a video showing how I shade the character, let me know in the comments, and if I do make it, I will add a link up here for it. For the shading here, you do want to make sure to use a full range of grayscale. Even pure black is okay because we will be changing it with the gradient map. You can do the shading here any way you want, so you can have something that's more blended, or you can even do cell shading, so you can achieve whichever style you're going for. You can make it as smooth or as rough as you like. Usually it's good to do the skin very soft, and you want to spend the most time on the face. My face is not completely smooth here, but that's not a problem because I can always smooth it out more later. It'll be easier to see issues once I apply the gradient map. Now we can get into the best part. What I like the most about this method is you can add the colors instantly and then reuse the same gradient map on other pages, so you don't have to worry about referencing a color palette, and the colors can very easily be adjusted as needed. First, I'm going to show how to make a gradient map layer. This will also be very similar in Photoshop. Photoshop doesn't have the selection layers, but you can still right-click on the thumbnail and click Select Pixels. Then click this little half filled in circle and Gradient Map. Also, I'm using Photoshop CS6, so if you use CC, it may look a bit different. Click on the gradient to bring up this screen, and it will look very similar to the one in Clip Studio Paint. In Clip Studio Paint, I will double click on the layer thumbnail to select it. You can see I have the hair selected, but I do want to turn off the marching ants since they are really distracting. So you can just click Show Border of Selected Area off. Then right click on the layer you did your shading on. Go to New Correction Layer and select Gradient Map. Clip Studio has these pre-made gradients, so if I click one, you can see now the hair has been colored instantly. There, it's done. Well, not quite, since this isn't my character's hair color, so the first time you create a gradient map, you will have to adjust it. You can click on a spot to add in a color, or click on an arrow and drag it away to delete it. Click the arrow, and then the color box to bring up your color wheels and pick the colors. So the far left here corresponds to pure black. Everything that was pure black on the shading layer will now be this color. And the far right corresponds to pure white. They correspond to pure black and pure white, not the darkest or lightest areas in the selected area. This is why you need to use black and white on the shading layer. If you don't see much variation, you may need to adjust your shading layer, and you can do that even with this gradient map turned on. This is why this method is so forgiving. I can adjust the shading easily all I want, and if I ever want to add in another color to the gradient map or change one slightly, I can do that. Now let's say I already had this character colored with gradient maps somewhere else. I just so happen to have another illustration here with her. What I want to do is, instead of making a gradient map again, I want to reuse this one I've already made. Click on the layer icon for the gradient map. What I have done here is create a set for this character where I will store all of her gradient maps. To create a set, click the wrench icon and create new set. Name it your character's name and click OK. Now click Create New Gradient and name it appropriately. So I've named hers Hair and Skin. Click OK. Now I'll go back to my other drawing, or if you're a comics artist, you'll go to the next page of your comic. This time I'll select the skin. Turn off the marching ants and right-click the shading layer. New correction layer, gradient map. Now I have my gradient set here already, so I will double-click the skin and it's done. With this, I can now see some areas that aren't very smoothed out, so I can easily correct this on my shading layer. Click OK. It will deselect the layer, so you'll have to double click to select it again. And now I will blend the colors. Now, even though this is showing different colors, I'm still shading using only black and white. This is because the gradient map is on top of the shading. It hasn't been integrated into the shading. As you can see, they are on separate layers. And the coloring is done. You can now use this gradient map every time you color this character. So all you need to do is black and white shading, and one click the color is done. Let's say though that this gradient map isn't fitting the scene. Like the purple shadow here isn't working with the scene. I need it to be a warmer color. So any point you can just double click this gradient and adjust it. So I click the arrow for the purple color, go to my color wheel, adjust the color, and click OK. I just noticed I forgot one of her eyebrows in the hair selection layer. It's on the skin layer. So again, I'll show how easy it is to fix this mistake. Make the skin selection layer visible. Now go to the marquee lasso tool. Make sure anti-aliasing is set to none. Select the eyebrow. Make sure you're on the skin layer and click delete. Then turn off the skin layer, turn the hair layer on, click on it, and fill it in using either a brush or the fill tool. It doesn't matter what color you use to fill it. Turn that layer off. Now click on the mask for the gradient layer. So this is the skin gradient map layer, so now I just delete it. Now click the mask for the hair gradient map and fill it in with the brush or the fill bucket tool. And as you can see, it's now instantly colored in again. Now make gradient map layers for all of the selection layers and make sure to add them to your character's gradient map set so you can reuse them with one click for other illustrations and comic pages. Now I never have to color this character again. We're not completely finished though. The gradient map is taking a huge chunk of the workload away, but we still have some areas to color, like the eyes and the nails. So these areas you will color however you'd like to match your own style on a new layer. I can go to my shading layer for the sclera of her eyes, click Ctrl C to copy, go above the gradient map layers, click Ctrl V to paste, and those are done. And now those areas are done. This might look pretty good and you might be satisfied with this, but it can be pushed further because we haven't really added in a light source yet. What I'm doing now is merging all of these layers I made into one. First, I make sure everything is in a folder and duplicate the folder. This way we can always go back to our gradient maps if we need to. Select the layers and right-click on one of the layer names and click Merge Selected Layers. And if you find something later you want to fix, you will go back to the original colors folder and adjust it there, and then just merge it again together like this. If you're coloring a comic page with multiple characters, you can also merge them all together into this one layer, since they're all going to be affected by the same light source. I like to also move the layer outside of the folder and then delete the folder, since I don't need any of these other layers anymore. Create a new layer and change the blending mode to hard light. Now determine where your light source will be coming from and what color it will be, and paint in your lights. If you have another light source, then you can create another hard light layer here. Create a new layer and add in any little effects. Like say the cell phone has a bit of a glow to it, you can add it in here. Or if the jet plane has a bit of shininess to it, I can also add it in here. Click up to the top of your layers, go to Layer, New Correction Layer, Brightness and Contrast. And now you can make some fine adjustments to how this looks. Click OK. You can turn this on and off to see how it looks. And that's it. As you can see, I didn't actually complete coloring this page yet. I colored like this just for this tutorial and to see how it looks, and it looks good, I think. And hopefully this helps you out as well. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet, because I will be making more tutorials whenever I can about ways to save time and make comics and illustrations as easy as possible. If anything was not clear, please leave a comment below and I will address it as best as I can in the comments or in a later video.